Hello, my name is Tony Mays. I am the Commonwealth of Learning's Education Specialist for Open Schooling. This is the third of 11 presentations, each of which summarizes the key issues in different chapters of Cole's new publication addressing the needs of out-of-school children and youths through expansion of open schooling. This third presentation reflects on Chapter 3 by Drs. Mschlanger and Sultana. In Chapter 3, we explore the nature of open educational resources, OER. The discussion of this chapter is organized around 5 key questions. What are the barriers to universal education? What are OER? How can OER support open schooling? What are the factors constraining use of OER? And what are the implications for future provision? Let us start with the first question, which explores the context in which we work. Many issues militate against achieving universal education for all. At least one of these barriers, access to and cost of textbooks, can be mitigated by using OER. OER can reduce costs, improve retention, improve pass rates, improve pass quality, and improve progression to the next level. But what are OER? This takes us to our second question. Almost any kind of resource has potential educational value. A picture like this can be used as a decoration, as an illustration in a book or a calendar, or on a greetings card, for example. Resources become educational resources when teachers design learning activities using the content. However, if you found this activity on the internet and wanted to use it, you could be breaking copyright in terms of the Berne Convention, which most countries observe. Copyright automatically exists in any created work, even if not specifically stated. Although most countries make provision for fair usage for educational purposes, this usually applies to use of only 10% or less of a particular resource. In addition, there is a big difference between using a resource with 30 learners in a classroom and sharing a resource digitally online, which could potentially be used by thousands of learners and teachers. The addition of an open license makes the resource open for reuse, although the copyright remains with the original creator. The CC BY SA license allows revision, but requires that the revision also be shared back for further use and further revision. So, open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium, digital or otherwise, that reside in the public domain or have been released under an open license that permits no cost access, use, adaptation, and redistribution by others with no or limited restrictions. The license tells you up front what you can and cannot do with the resource. OER form part of open solutions alongside free and open source software, open access, open data, and various crowdsourcing platforms. So we are moving from a position of a default of all rights reserved copyright towards the use of Creative Commons, which is the most widely used open licensing system. And the link will take you to the Creative Commons site. Examples of different licensing conditions are attribution only, CC BY. You can do anything with the work, provided you acknowledge the original source. Then we have CC BY NC, no commercial use. We can use the resource for public schooling, we can use the resource in public universities, but we cannot use the resource for a profit. CC BY ND, no derivatives. You have to use the resource exactly as it is. You mustn't make any changes to it. CC BY SA, this is the default license used by the Commonwealth of Learning. You can use the resource for various purposes, but if you make changes, you should share those changes back so that others can use them. Then we have combinations like CC BY and CSA, attribute the resource, no commercial use, share back any revisions, and CC BY and CND, attribute the resource, no commercial use, and do not make any changes. We don't particularly like the last two for educational purposes because normally we want to adapt an educational resource to suit a particular group of learners or a particular context. So we like to be able to adapt resources. If we think about this, we can see a continuum from public domain where there are no restrictions at all the way through to the most restrictive, all rights reserved copyright. Cole likes to work, as I've said, with CC BY SA, so that we encourage people to adapt the content and then share back the revisions. David Wiley suggests that there are 5 factors which make a resource truly open. The ability to retain it. So even if the original author or creator is no longer using it, you keep your own copy and you can continue to use it. Reuse, so you can use the same resource again and again and again. The ability to revise, to make changes to the resource. The ability to remix, to put different resources together. And the ability to redistribute, to share with other audiences. Increasingly, it is important that we recognize the teachers who have been creating this kind of content. So now we have some idea of what OER are. How can we use them? We can use OER to support the core curriculum competences for the 21st century, which we identified in our discussion of Chapter 2. Encouraging active learning, promoting deep thinking, responding to contexts, generating interest to learn, promoting independent learning through use of resource-based learning approaches using freely available resources. Professor Sugata Mitra argues that if we provide access to diverse learning resources and big questions to answer, children will create self-organized learning environments and begin to learn new things, both on their own and with support from their peers. It is not necessary, then, for the teacher to spoon-feed content. It should be possible to provide digital devices preloaded with the necessary learning content more cheaply and more conveniently than printed proprietary textbooks, so that any child can learn anywhere, at any time, regardless of gender or disability or other barriers to accessing learning. There is a growing number of guides to using OER which have been published as OER and which can be accessed from Cole's open access repository, and I've given you the link here. You can also access further training on OER, for example from OER Africa. Of course, we need to ensure quality, but because we can revise and remix openly licensed resources, we can also improve the quality at the same time. So if OER are potentially so powerful, why aren't we all already using them? Partly, it is because too few teachers have been systematically introduced to OER. We can't use what we don't know about. And partly it is because too many teachers are not fully aware of legal permissions more generally. What are you allowed to do, what are you not allowed to do in terms of the legal framework of your country? And partly because it is hard to try something new, to make the move from being the sage on the stage to being the guide on the side, or to becoming a co-creator of knowledge. It requires new teaching perspectives and new skills. So now we come to our last question, where we turn our attention to the implications for the future. Some suggested questions for discussion after you have read Chapter 3. Thinking about your own country, do all children have access to the learning resources they need? What are the main problem areas, if not? Have you understood the concept of OER? Where could you learn more? By using OER, we can ensure the same content is available in text, graphic, audio, video, or multimedia forms. How could this help improve access and success? How can we ensure the quality of the OER we use and reuse? And what can you do to promote the use of OER? As with all Coles works, this presentation and the book upon which it is based is openly licensed. We thank you for your time and we look forward to the discussion.